In the last video, we demonstrated the Nethopper platform's ability to create EKS clusters on Amazon using infrastructure as code. Those clusters are shown here as EKS Acme Prod and EKS Acme Dev. We are now going to take those clusters, add them to this application network that I've created called DevOps Admin Control by using the hub cluster to install the Nethopper agent, which will cause the clusters to join the application network, essentially call home to this hub cluster, and then we will deploy applications to them. To add these clusters to the network, we need to attach them, and we will select them here. Now, these metadata names that I've given these clusters will be used to correlate these clusters to the ones created in Amazon. So we'll attach the Dev1 first. We'll leave it in the default namespace. I've tagged it as an edge and dev, and you'll see why we use tags soon. I will also attach the prod cluster. Now, although the clusters show here as attached, they have not yet been installed. This is a one-time process by which we copy and download the instructions and paste them in a kubectl console of that cluster to install the Nethopper agent. The terminal window shown here is connected to my hub cluster. I've already updated the Kubernetes contexts to include the context for each of the clusters we created using AWS commands. So if I use my shortcut and say kubectl get context, you'll see that I have three. I have this one for my dev cluster, this one for my prod. And so we can see here by this asterisk, I'm currently on the prod cluster. And if I do a kubectl get all, we'll see that there's nothing installed in the cluster. To install the Nethopper agent and associated software, I am going to select this download button, which will create this command that I can copy and paste that will download the YAML, install it in the namespace I specified. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And while that's installing, we can watch its update, its status in real time here on the UI. It's a reactive UI, so no need to refresh. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the dev cluster. I'm going to copy the commands. I'm going to once again look at my context, and I'm going to update my context to use the dev cluster. Before I do that, let me show you. We should see it getting installed here on the prod cluster, and we do. So now I'm going to switch to the dev cluster to install the Nethopper agent in that cluster. And we could see here with the kubectl get all command that there's nothing running here. And this is where we're going to want to paste our instructions. I'm going to have to copy them once again, and that'll install. And again, we can watch the status update in real time here, and we can see our prod cluster has already attached. And once the dev cluster comes up, we will now have an application network form, which means all three clusters are connected in an application network, secured using mutual TLS encryption on all endpoints, as well as having a client-side load balancer running in our router. And we'll wait just a minute for this cluster to come up. With all clusters now up and connected in the application network, we can now deploy applications. Note that each cluster is tagged with edge. So as we move to the application tag, we see we have two tabs, objects and distribution rules. Now, distribution rules simply match cluster tags with application tags and distribute applications accordingly. So in our case today, what we'll demonstrate is we're going to create a rule that says any object or application that is tagged with, we're going to create one called edge, because the application we're adding will be tagged as edge. I want to distribute it to all clusters tagged edge. Now recall, both our dev and prod clusters were tagged with edge. So now that we have this rule in place, any application that I add that is also tagged edge will get distributed to those clusters. So we're going to use a simple guestbook application that we have in this public repository of simple Argo applications. And now I'm going to tag the application here as an edge. And as soon as I save this, we should see this application show up in the Nethopper UI as it does here, and then automatically get deployed to both the dev and the prod clusters. And we can see here that in fact what happens. So we see here that we have underneath guestbook, we have deployments on two clusters, one called Acme Core Dev and Prod. And you can see the application consists of a Kubernetes service and a Kubernetes deployment. Looks like our application is in sync and healthy. And if we look at it, we can see that it is deployed as well. So now we have a fully formed application network with infrastructure created from code and applications deployed there too using simple distribution rules and point and click actions. This concludes our video on deploying applications and creating a multi-cloud network.